I'm Adam Willems, lead reporter at the Financial Revolutionist.
I'm Raj Sundaresan, CEO of Altimetrik.
Thank you so much for being here, Raj. I'm wondering if you could briefly explain what Altimetric does.
Well, Altimetrik, we are a digital business enablement company. What that really means is we really bring product engineering and data together to bring in digital business live for our clients, both from a digital business outcomes as well as platform modernization, which is very, very core and important these days for any client what we work with. Yeah.
Right. I'm wondering what sort of has caught your eye at Money 2020, given I'd say a slow move to actually modernize banking cores and other sort of core platforms.
I think two to three things I would say.
Sure.
One is this key, the whole hype around artificial intelligence, machine learning, LLM, Gen I think that's a lot going on, and there's a lot of hype around that, which I do think it is there. But I believe what is important for any of those things to come to life is to have the fundamental foundational data platform to be in place. So I think that's the focus, and that's a huge opportunity for us as an Altimetric, because we are a company which focuses on data and enabling digital outcomes for our clients. And what I really believe is that if you don't have your data platform, and I say data platform is all your data in a single source of truth manner, and the
Hmm.
quality of data, the governance of data, and the MDM aspects of it not taken care in an ongoing manner, not just one time,
Right.
then what you see out of it, the outcomes coming out from AI, ML, or when I say AI, it's no longer going to be artificial intelligence, it's going to be artificial hallucination if you don't have the data
Right.
right. So,
Right.
so we are there to help our clients build that platform right first, the data platform and the single source of truth, and then enable that AI for our clients. And so we're all there, and I think that there are clients coming to realization that they're going to now focus on the single source of truth and the data quality and the governance before they enable it. And I think that's a huge conversation going on, how AI could help in the fintech world or the banking world. That's number one. Number two is how quickly can you get features to the market from a banking perspective, from a fintech, from
Sure.
any perspective. That's kind of being constrained by the platforms banks have. It's all legacy platforms around 10, 20 years old.
Hmm.
And there's this big, head-on collision between the business who wants to get features out of the door, and then the technology who wants to keep the lights on, patching and patching and patching the existing platform. How do you bring those two things together is our key value proposition, to bringing business and technology together, modernizing the platform in a very incremental manner without
Sure.
risking the business,
Right.
but also while you're modernizing, bringing new feature sets into the roadmap. Right, that's very important. That kind of, you're meeting the business needs as well as the technology needs to get that going, and that's number two. And number three is obviously all the innovation going around within the fintech world.
Hmm.
How do we use several services, right? Banking as a service, payments as a service, card as a service. How do you kind of have those key core assets of bigger financial institution opened up for the startups to consume? And
Hmm.
that's a huge one, because there are a lot of intermediaries right now kind of providing that experiential APIs
Hmm.
rather than the banks themselves provide, because they have the core assets. So that whole bigger enablement is important for the fintech world to thrive. I think those are the three key things which I see going on in the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
And all those three areas, Ultimatic comes in and helps, be it in the data area, be it in the
Hmm.
platform modernization, or be it in, I would say anything as a service, right? So we are there
Hmm.
to help our clients to get that going.
Right. Understood. Yeah. Thank you for walking me through that.
No worries.
I have a number of questions from there. One of them sort of is most practically, what does it look like to have the right data operations and protocols in place to then have something you can build AI on top of? You mentioned single source of truth and so forth, but what does that really mean in terms of the kinds of mechanisms that an FI or other institution needs to have in place?
See, I think at the end of the day, the data signals of truth is important. Again, I go back between business and technology.
Sure.
Technology tries to build this platform in a
Hmm.
consolidated manner, and they would start building this data lake or data mesh, you want to call anything. It takes a while for the technology to build, and the business is still waiting. So
Hmm.
that's cannot happen. We got to do it incrementally, so business sees value as you're doing this platform. Very, very, very important, and that's where you
Right.
see businesses building their own little data lakes, and that becomes silos, and that's
Right.
where It's not going to help you in any of AI, ML. That's not a single source of truth. Each business function would have its own single source of truth. Nothing comes together.
Right.
There's where we come in, kind of help, and or there are technologies out there, data lake in a mesh format, which is more giving independence to the business to have their own domain-based databases or
Mm-hmm.
data lakes, but bringing it all together in a very federated governance manner so that you have a single source of truth and either that, or if you want to go in the consolidated, building a data fabric is very important too.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the core thing or the key thing for this all is bringing business and technology together so that they collaborate and business sees outcomes in a matter of weeks
Right.
and technology builds this very incrementally. And
Right.
that is important so that AI ML could be then incrementally enabled based on the business functions they need to. It's not this big bang approach which we have seen miserably failed. Every organization is just taken in that form.
Right. Absolutely. From there, you mentioned sort of interest in blank as a service
Yeah,
solutions,
yeah,
payments,
yeah,
banking,
yeah, yeah.
whatever. When you are sort of liaising with those different solutions, are you looking for them as partners or acquisitions, or what's the sort of end goal there?
We're looking at two things of it, right? Provider, which is the financial institutions,
Sure.
banks, and the payment card processors and everybody. They have key assets, right? Your core, banking core is a thing. For banking as a service, the banking core is very, very important.
Yeah.
So you try to eliminate the intermediary. So helping those banks build that experiential APIs. They
Mm-hmm.
have APIs, but they got to have a very good experience. Whoever is consuming those APIs to have that, and that is what we provide for the banks. And then once you're providing that for the startups and the middle enterprises who are trying to consume it, we help them to accelerate because we have pipes for banking as a service, for payments as a service, card issuance as a service. So in both ways, both ecosystem, we help them do that. And there are intermediaries who have already built this banking as a service. We also
Mm-hmm.
help them to enable clients. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of banks and payment processors are all looking to expose and have it as a separate revenue generation for them by exposing these core banking platform and the payments platform as a service for fintechs and startups to consume it. So,
Right.
so I think we are helping both aspects of it. Yeah,
Right.
and to
Absolutely.
do that, banking as a service and everything, huge investment from a modernization perspective. Because if
Mm-hmm.
you have to enable that, it has to be very friendly APIs, and that has to be very beautifully. People talk about user experience. This is experiential APIs, is what I say.
Right.
So that when a developer from a community comes and uses it, they should be
Mm-hmm.
able to consume that in a matter of weeks rather than taking a long few months cycle to implement that. Yeah.
Right. Totally. And with that in mind, obviously, I think uh, AI is one thing. It's been around for a long time in a few different iterations and names. But you mentioned Money 2020 being sort of this space for innovation, and I would argue also a degree of experimentation. And I'm wondering, sort of from Altimetric's perspective, how do you gauge whether something is maybe buzzworthy or sort of going through some sort of zeitgeist versus something that you really should be investing in?
Uh, I think we are in, whether it's buzzworthy or anything, we probably cannot predict it. So we are in experimenting along with the hype cycle if it is,
Sure,
but
sure.
also learning from that and saying what is core for us to invest in to make when the hype kind of settles down and becomes the trend, we
Mm-hmm.
got to be there as well. So for your example, AI, there was discriminative AI, there were AI engines,
Right,
there were rule-based AIs,
right.
now it's Gen AI.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to be there doing that. But at the end of the day, we look at what is that the core aspects which needs to be in place, which is the core data,
Mm-hmm.
and how do we enable that is very important in that sense. And again, if you think about other innovative things around the fintechs trying to quickly bring a product to market where giving bank accounts to a consumer as well as accepting cards as well as issuing cards,
Right,
the three big functions that payment processors and banks do. How do you enable them quickly to consume those things? They don't have to build any of those.
right,
To your examples around you know anything as a service, and
right,
how do I enable and I would bring that? Do we build those services? Ultimately, is not in the business of doing it, but do we enable the banks to provide the services? That's where we are, and we are there in a very incremental manner, and that's kind of synonymous to your experimentation, which is important because at we got to quickly fail is what our way of thinking, so that we can
right.
course correct and keep moving forward. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, understood.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, are there sort of what's that experimentation pipeline looking like for the next year?
I think we are in there all around Gen AI, and how do we, from a productivity perspective as
Sure.
well, from our engineering perspective, how do
Right.
we enforce our digital business methodology, which we really go out, because our way of doing is incremental, iterative way. When you're doing outcomes in a very incremental way, you got to get to the point of arrival, and all of this increments should add up to get to the point of arrival, and hence we have this digital business methodology,
Mm-hmm.
and then we enforce that. And how do I enforce that is where we want to use a lot of this AI and things like that. And there are multiple things available. GitHub is
Right.
open up, and so we
Yeah.
try to see how do we further not just open it up with the open source and the GitHub, but open up our own repos.
Right.
And how do we bring that? How do we improve our code coverage? How do we enforce our engineers not to take any shortcuts? So we believe there's going to be a productivity from just an engineering discipline perspective, 15 to 20%, and we've seen that. Copilot gives you to some extent. We want to
Mm-hmm.
build on top of it a
Mm-hmm.
lot more enforcement, and that I think that's a huge experimentation pipeline for us to say how do we bring productivity, which not only helps us but kind of helps our clients as well to quickly get things done and in a very cost efficient manner.
Sure.
And all things around what's beyond Gen AI,
Yeah.
that's important too. And LLMs are great, but how do you kind of get it within your firewall? How do you ensure that
Mm-hmm.
there is no longer that hallucination? There's how do you bring that quality aspect and the governance aspect so that somebody else is not training your data in a different way so that you get outcomes which is not the right thing for your business.
Right.
All of that's in our experimentation pipeline, building those things. And
Right.
we are building a lot of our AI engines, which is going to support not just for training data. We're
Mm-hmm.
doing our own synthetic data generation, because when you want to train data, you can only train data as much of history you
Right.
know about the data.
Right.
But if you have to do some corner cases, you got to have synthetic data generated.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing some synthetic data generation aspects of it based on the industry. So you got to have relevant data so that you could train the data in those edge cases which you have not seen in the past, so that your AI is ready to handle those things. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, understood. I have two questions left.
sure.
One is, you know, productive data storage and structuring also requires sort of secure data storage and structuring. And it seems as though Gen AI is sort of upending a lot of the existing sort of balance of power in that respect. And I'm wondering sort of how Altimetric is responding to that.
So for us, security is job number one for us, right? At the
Sure.
end of the day, whatever we do, data, product, platform modernization, product engineering, that has to be table stakes, and all of our engineers go through that and ensure that, and that's the DNA we bring to the table. So as far as security, it's very important right from the get-go on the quality and the governance and the data aspect, and
Mm-hmm.
ensuring that the security is inbuilt, and we bring in enough in our methodology and our platform.
Sure.
These are built in, and which is getting enforced within the entire development cycle, as well as when you push it into production. How do you kind of get? At the end of the day, it is a matter of how do you keep up and continuously keep up with the security is very important, rather than being in the reactive way of patching and unpatching and things. So we try to
Mm-hmm.
tend to stay away from that, and then we build every aspect of security, be it product or data or both together from the get-go, and it's a ongoing, consistent way of ensuring that security is prevailing.
Okay. Yeah. My last question is whether there are any questions I haven't asked that you feel like I should have.
There's a lot.
Yeah, I imagine. I
I'm
imagine.
sure. I'm sure this technology world and the whole digital business is evolving so rapidly.
Yeah.
So we want to ensure our whatever we are modernizing, it's future proof, and
Mm-hmm.
whatever we're building with the data and the signals of truth is future proof. And I know it's a fully loaded word when I say it's future proof, but and ensure that the security, the regulatory aspects, the quality, and the governance, whatever we do is important, and all of that is what is part of our digital business methodology, which we bring to the table. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Well,
Yep.
thank you, Raj.
No,
It's been a
thank
pleasure.
you.